Yeah, I'm sorry. 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 Hope everybody is doing all right. I don't need that shit. Should I do the yeah, we're gonna game later, so I didn't turn it on. All right. That's good. And should I I don't know. Like sometimes I do feel like I want to use the soundboard because it does enhance the things that I say a little bit. I wouldn't go crazy about it either because, you know, that's how it goes. This all right. What's this? Oh, I'm gonna check it afterwards. All right, so we have a couple of videos from yesterday. That we haven't seen yet. And it's Friday. I just went through the news a little bit and nothing too exciting in my opinion. Oh, that's a long ass one. Oh, this is interesting. All right. I hope everybody's having a great Friday. As you can see, I am deep in space right now of my cat. And because it's Friday, we're going to go full casual. We're going to watch a bunch of videos. I'm missing this and this. Oh, if you know, you know. If you recognize, you recognize. Oh shit, that's gonna be funny, but probably in a hurtful way. Okay, hold on a second. All right, all right. Everybody should be very happy. This still looks okay. Those of you, my keyboard is way too far. This is all right. I guess we'll see. Can we hear the soundboard? No. Do you guys even care for that or? Fuck, man. Uh, I didn't hear anything. I think you guys didn't. This is gonna be loud as fuck. A little bit. Alright, maybe if I get riled up, yeah. It should be fine. I mean, these are the usual settings. So, all right, guys. Fuck, man, I had such a weird interaction at work today. Fucking weird people. All right. We had YouTube. Oh, I need to change the transitions too. Is this good? This is not good. Did I move? Did I move too much? Or I said this one first and I forgot about it? What happened? That's way off. What am I looking at? So this was fine. Oh, this was fine. This should be like that. Hmm. I think it's a little fucked up, right? Oh my god. Why do I have to go insane over this stupidest shit? It's a little small. For fuck's sake. It looked alright before. I don't understand. Fuck. Alright, whatever. 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 Alright, let's start with this one right here. It's ad for whatever this is. Cybersecurity. Alright, this is great. I'm very curious as to where it's gonna go, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna get a pretty good dump of information. Uh, I mean, if you know, you know. So low level cybersecurity is about to get weird.
Cybersecurity, and as a result, the world, is going to get very weird in the next few years as AI advancements in its ability to find and exploit vulnerabilities in software is getting better and better. The topic of this video is a vulnerability that Claude found in Firefox and kind of what that means for the software community writ large, right? This all stems from a good, in my opinion, by the way, partnership with Anthropic and Mozilla, where they partnered together, and Anthropic's model found 500 zero-day vulnerabilities, of which 22 were found in Firefox, and 14 of those 22 or high severity. To kind of visualize what we're talking about.
That is so crazy. So I keep saying it. People make shit. People make mistakes. They make mistakes in the shit that they make. The only reason you don't know about more 0 days is either because it lacks financial motivation, or it's not a popular product, so people aren't looking into stuff. It might not be as worth it as other things, uh, and it's no surprise, right, that these models would be able to quickly identify a lot of exploits, a lot of vulnerabilities, because you have very specific contexts which are very well defined in cybersecurity. You have uh, all sorts of attacks, right? And so if you ask the model to go through all these attacks on on a product, in this case the browser, is going to be able to go through all of it very quickly, as opposed to a person doing it manually. So it's very cool. It's a good thing. It's not insanely impressive from the model standpoint, in my opinion. But it is also, in my opinion, unsurprising that they found this many this quickly. You could just imagine that shit is riddled with holes. So I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's very sad. That's for sure.
About here. These are all of the vulnerabilities found in Firefox over time, and vulnerabilities exist in any code base to include web browsers, right? They have to render arbitrary user data, very hard problem to solve. And just this month so far, or I guess last month in February, of all the vulnerabilities that were found here, this bar, 22 of them were found by Opus 4.6. Again, this is the model by Anthropic. This is not like some special tool. This is just point the model at the source code, go find vulnerabilities. Now, finding vulnerabilities is one thing, but where it gets really hairy is the ability for the model to write an exploit. Before we go into this, I want to highlight a comment that someone made on Reddit and go into the kind of the edge case of where, while they may have found 500 0 days, finding a vulnerability is much different than actually finding an exploitable vulnerability, and then writing an exploit is a very different problem, okay? The reason for this post is someone said Opus 4.6 found 500 exploitable 0 days, and then someone asked, like, what is the reality of this? Is this real, or did they pull numbers out of their ass? And then some commenter very aptly put, oh god, we found a stir copy, shut it down, evacuate everybody, even if the length is checked directly before, it's equivalent to a stir n copy. I want to highlight this comment because I noticed in the report that Anthropic's red team wrote about OpenSC, which is the Open Smart Card software, the software that's meant to, you plug in your smart card to do like PIV authentication, and this is a software that's meant to parse out the data on the smart card, maybe extract your public key and do that kind of exchange, right? And so Claude used their models to do vulnerability research on OpenSC. And they claimed that they found a vulnerability. Claude quickly identified a location where multiple stircat operations were used in succession, which, if you take that at face value, is an unsafe C function because a stircat operation does not check the length of the value being concatenated. So for example, this buffer here is path max. It's 4096 bytes, right? It's a buffer that is statically in size. And then this FP value, wow, this FP value gets concatenated to your file name. Guys, that's a string-based buffer overflow. That's a stack-based buffer overflow in software that comes from the smart card. You could use that to exploit the computer by plugging in a smart card. That's not good. Well, hold on. If you actually go to the code and read it, if you look at this piece of code here, you're in the function, if the strlen of FP is not 64, because...
Yo, by the way, if you can just look at this and make sense of what is written, great for you. I forgot most of that.
By the way, it's just a ASCII hex encoded SHA-256, so 256 times 2 for hex divided by 8 is 64.
If your coworker asks you to review a PR and then you find out they didn't even test their changes, you're probably going to be a little upset.
If you think about it, this is a hard-coded value, so therefore, there is no vulnerability here. You take the size of the file name minus strlen of FP, which by the way is always 64, minus 2 for the null terminator, and for the slash here, there's no vulnerability, okay? So I want to highlight, this is scary, the fact this can happen. But there is also this problem we're seeing where a lot of these bugs aren't really bugs, and they did, I guess, force the OpenSC maintainers to make it to stir lcat, where you use the max length, but that's not super important. Now again, while all of that is annoying, I do want to highlight, they did find a vulnerability in Firefox. And they use the AI to write an exploit for Firefox. I want to kind of go into what's going on here. And it's been a while, but today's video is sponsored by me. Guys, I know we are in an era where learning to code is kind of going out of style. Maybe it's bad to know how to code in these days, but I highly believe that if you're going to either be an AI practitioner, you're going to use AI to code, It seriously helps to understand how computers work at a fundamental level. And in my opinion, the best way to do that, to know what computers are actually doing and how code can break, is by learning a language like C. On my platform level academy, we have a C course called Zero to Hero C Programming that I've actually recently gone through and refilmed a lot of the modules. We also made an entirely new project where you build a key value store, kind of like a dictionary in Python, and do our automated testing service to test your code and get your certificate. Guys, you can't be a good programmer even with AI if you don't know how computers work. And where do you learn how computers work? Guys, on the Level Academy. We'll see you in there. Thanks, guys. Now, when we
That's
say
great.
Claude
That's
exploited
awesome.
this bug, you really do mean we just gave Claude a virtual machine and a task verifier and asked it to create an exploit. They gave it 350 chances to succeed, and ultimately, I think only spent like $4,000 in tokens. Okay, so from the perspective of like a professional security engineer, exploit developer, those kinds of people get paid like $200,000 over the course of a year, and they did all of this at the rate of 350 tries at $4,000 total, extremely cheap from a pure engineering standpoint.
Yeah.
Now, the bug that I did find is like
I mean, there's already solutions that offer this exact marketing proposition where instead of having a dedicated security team, you have just this agent that scans your network and your devices and checks if you have vulnerabilities continuously. So this is way more advanced, obviously.
really complex. It has to do with a vulnerability in the binding process of WebAssembly. There's a lot of words there. Basically, and again, the thing is, I still fully don't understand this bug because it is a very complex statefulness issue between WebAssembly itself and the bindings in JavaScript and an optimization between those bindings. As far as I understand it, this is WebAssembly, right? WebAssembly is a binary, low-level assembly-like language for the virtual machine that runs WebAssembly in your browser. It's used for like optimizing like very, where you want code to be kind of higher speed than JavaScript, but not use JavaScript. So this is a WebAssembly module that exposes two modules. It exposes a function that calls a function, and then you expose a function that is a simple identity function. So get the first parameter of that argument. So then what you can do basically is apparently there's a use after free in the way that the bindings between WebAssembly and JavaScript work, and it has to do with all these very complicated functions. The thing is, from a pure static analysis perspective, which is a lot of what I do at work, I read a lot of code, this would be very hard to find. And also, because it's a weird binding process between WebAssembly and JavaScript, it's also very hard to fuzz this, fuzzing being the act of injecting malicious code or malformed code into a process, because WebAssembly itself is a grammar-based language, so fuzzing grammar-based anything is difficult. And on top of that, you're fuzzing not only the grammar-basedness of WebAssembly, but you're also fuzzing the bindings between the WebAssembly and JavaScript. So you have two separate grammars and then a statefulness issue in between them. To find a use after free, all of those things are the hardest things to find in the security world because it's such a hard thing to think about. What LLMs are really good at, I know there's like the context problem, there's like they can't retain a lot of information for a long time, but if you give them a small enough scope of code, they can logically reason about that code and understand the potential states very, very well. And the reason I say that is if you go into the rest of this process, I'm not going to read this, I just want to show it to you guys. The way that the LLM figures out how to turn this use after free primitive into an arbitrary read write is extremely impressive. When you're doing exploit development, you have to create these things called primitives, right? You want to create basically a function that does something, right? Either it gets you a leak so you can break ASLR, which is the randomization of address space locations so that hackers can't put things anywhere, right? For example, when you run a program that's compiled correctly with position independence, it puts the program, your kernel, into a random location, so if you do get an arbitrary write, you don't know where to write. So the AI knew, okay, first of all, I need to create an address of primitive to use this use after free and leak out data about the info or the address of it. And then once I get that info leak, I need to make a fake object primitive, the ability to forge a JavaScript object reference at an arbitrary address to enable an arbitrary read write. And then from there, it goes through the whole process of walking through how to do exploit development pretty much on its own. Again, they said it took like 350 tries on this, but they kind of left it fairly unsupervised. And eventually it does get to the place where it's able to forge objects with controlled values, right? With controlled addresses, and ultimately turn this into a read 64 primitive and a write 64 primitive, okay? We are at a place where Opus 4.6 is a pretty good, pretty cheap exploit developer. Now, I do want to highlight, right, they were not able to break out of the browser sandbox, right? The problem with JavaScript or any kind of browser exploit is even though you get arbitrary read-write or code execution in the browser, you then have to break out of the browser sandbox that forbids you from being able to touch other processes and files on the browser,
Thankfully.
right? That's a separate exploit. While this bug itself does not break out of the sandbox, it is kind of scary that we got the exploit to work at all. And to show like the severity of this with like real data, I want to highlight this project CyberGym. It's by a bunch of researchers at UC Berkeley. Really, really cool project. Shout out to them. Basically, CyberGym is a repository of 188 projects and 1,500, I believe, instances of those projects that have pre-known vulnerabilities, right? So known to the researchers, but not known to the models. And so effectively, they benchmark the AI against reproducing the vulnerability and then doing open-ended vulnerability discovery in those code bases.
Here it's a little peculiar because it might still be like in the training data, right? There is risk of that. We've seen that with very complicated mathematical puzzles where the exact question wasn't, but because of the format and the technical information, it was able to create this correlation. So, you know, uh, it would be very, very hard to assure with 100% that it was not already in, well, depending on the training data set that they used, I would guess. But if they're just using these big ass LLM models, I mean, they've been scraped on the internet. So how could you say with a 100% guarantee that it hasn't seen that or something similar enough that it's able to apply the same logic?
To find issues that are pre-known, right? So very like good way of saying, oh, is the AI actually good at VR? Can it find relatable bugs or bugs that actually matter? Okay. And I want to just highlight kind of the velocity we're seeing in the success rate of these models. So going back to just Codex GPT 4.1, which again was only in May of last year, coming up on a year, had a 7.4 success rate. Now, success rate, I believe, is functioned as the percent of target vulnerabilities reproduced, percentage of instances where the agent successfully reproduces the target vulnerabilities by generating a working POC, okay? So if we go from Codex on 4.1 being 7.4, not even a year later, we have Anthropic's Claude Opus 4.6 on one trial is up to 66.6% success rate. It's a lot of S's to say. That being said, this is not meant to fearmonger. This is more, or to make people afraid. This is more just to highlight that this is going to be the place where a lot of VR is done. It is going to be the norm that security researchers are doing security research alongside an agent that may be working at the same speed, if not faster.
100% sure that it would be faster. It's guaranteed that it would be faster. I'm not too centered, right?
Researcher themselves. So exploits is one thing, right? But once you do an exploit, you have to like put something there, some kind of malware to either to stick around, to persist, or to do your evil bidding, to collect all of your data you want to steal, okay? APT36, I think this is a Russian APT. I forget which country this comes from, but they have been caught using vibeware, which is effectively AI generated or vibe coded malware. And this is really scary for a variety of reasons. The main one is if an APT can just produce 100 times more malware, being able to just say, hey, Claude, can you make that again, but change the way you
Well, we've seen it already, right? We've seen people doing all sorts of mistakes because they've been vibe coding malware, right? We've seen the ransomware issues. There was the one where the actual encryption key was hard coded in the file, so very easily they were able to unencrypt the encrypted data from the victim. And we've also seen another one where uh, the public key, the key to not the private key, to decrypt the encryption data was just uh, completely deleted. So it was absolutely impossible to reverse the encryption. So people have been doing this a whole bunch, and you have multiple aspects as well, right? Because everything has been like capitalized, so you have people with low skills vibe coding uh, malware, right? You also have people with, well, I don't know the skills here, because you could have highly skilled people doing it and poorly skilled people doing it. We have people also building these applications to distribute as a service to other people that have either no skills or very low skills, and they all use LLM models, and so it's all a bunch of shit. It's just gonna be shit everywhere. Shit bots trying to hack, shit bots protecting themselves from shit everywhere.
did your process injection, or can you change the way that you hid your ASCII strings? Can you change the algorithm? We did that. Can you write a new algorithm for me? And also, by the way, they're using a variety of languages: Go, Rust, Nim, Zig, Crystal. I've never even heard of Crystal, right? The ability to just arbitrarily change this under the hood and produce new malware basically for free creates a very difficult problem for defenders. They came up with a term for this. Obviously, this is very CompTIA of the industry. Distributed denial of detection, DDoD. Don't do that. Just say what it is. It's
Oh,
vibe coded malware. Okay.
whoa.
We are in the transition to a very weird world. Okay, so what does that mean for you as a human being trying to just live here? I would say a few things. One, defense in depth, super important. Make sure you're always using multi-factor authentication. Make sure you always have something like a YubiKey, not an app.
Hacked,
Use them every day.
hacked,
And then also, like, keep your antivirus up to date, guys. I know there's
hacked.
tons of them on the market. You got Malwarebytes, Clam, AV. Listen, at least for me, in my opinion, if you're a Windows user, which a lot of the world is, Microsoft Defender, Windows Defender is a very good antivirus. I would not do anything else other than Windows Defender. Again, in 2010.
It was a great video, but it was super technical, and I didn't think it was gonna be like that. We're gonna give it thumbs up right here. Still a good video.
OpenAI
All right.
OpenAI has not
Cool. Now we're gonna watch how many works. The OpenAI problem is about to become. Oh no. Fuck.
OpenAI has not been having a great year, as it completes its metamorphosis from a non-profit organization operating for the good of humanity to a shareholder-focused
military.
company gearing up for one of the biggest IPOs in history. It has come up against some, teething problems. It is facing legal challenges over the fair use of intellectual property, legal challenges over its governance, legal challenges over the safe use of its tools, talent churn amongst its top developers, and now significant reputational damage amongst effectively all of its stakeholders. All of this wasn't helped by its willingness to embrace what many see as war profiteering, further straying away from their original stated
Well,
goal
they have
in
to.
order to chase revenue wherever it can find it. Because,
That's
well, I
right.
mean, fully autonomous AI killbots and mass surveillance systems don't really sound like they are improving the future of humanity. In response to this, over just the last weeks, some of even the most staunch AI optimists have spoken out against the decisions this company has been making. But Anyway, all of this is on top of the biggest and most immediate problem of all, which is that OpenAI is simply burning billions
Sorry.
of dollars every month on top of trillions of dollars in future spending commitments with no clear answer for how it's going to get that money. Now, maybe this would all be okay if it was still the undisputed leader in this world-changing technology. But in the last few
You can
years,
stay.
several other models from better-funded companies have come along and either matched or exceeded OpenAI's capabilities. It's now unclear if the early pioneers of this technology have spent hundreds of billions of dollars developing systems that can now be effectively replicated by random Swedish men in their bedroom. It's also becoming less clear exactly how world-changing this technology really is going to be in the first place, putting more question marks over the company's future. For now, its investors are doubling down. Just last week, Amazon, who is theoretically a competitor, Nvidia, a supplier, and the ever-reliable SoftBank announced a record investment of $110 billion in additional funding, which will keep the GPUs on for another few months. But this lifeline has, in turn, presented another potential issue that would almost sound absurd if it wasn't for a growing pool of people raising the alarm bells over it. OpenAI, alongside some other big names, have now become so valuable in private markets that if they do all go public this year, their collective weighting could legitimately break the stock market.
OpenAI, as you rightly pointed out, had talked about almost $1.4 trillion in investments.
Google, Amazon, Microsoft, NVIDIA, they're all kind of backing everyone right now to lift up the wider AI market.
OpenAI declaring code red as the AI race intensifies, and Google threatens to unseat the industry's early leader.
These U.S. big tech corporations are fear-mongering about China.
That raises a lot of questions about how OpenAI employees feel about this.
Workers using AI are more productive. They're also more burned out than ever before.
Brad, if you want to sell your shares, I'll find you a
Oh yeah, that's unsurprising because the expectation isn't to keep the output at the same level and just enjoy more free time. It's just to add much more production because we're at the tipping edge right now, right? You need the system to keep working as it has because otherwise everything's going to come crashing, right? It's already starting to crumble because the fucking theater, it only can go on for so long, mathematically it's that's it, right? So yeah, I'm sorry.
I always say you can't manage what you can't see. Monday.com shows you the full picture like that.
Now, despite how it may appear from the outside, the business leaders and investment managers pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into OpenAI are fully aware of the questions and criticisms people have about the business. It's not like every single person on the internet has seen something that the CEO of Microsoft or Nvidia somehow didn't get the memo for. They are all capable of doing the basic arithmetic that concludes that a lot of these numbers don't really make a lot of sense, but they are still betting on it anyway. By the business fundamentals alone, yeah, it doesn't look great. But to these mega investors, the case for OpenAI can continue to be justified so long as four things remain true. Now, unfortunately for them, out of those four variables, there are only three that the company can really control. It has to maintain extremely strong user growth, preferably amongst users that are actually willing to pay money for the service. It has to demonstrate that those customers will actually stick around to be profited off of, and it has to remain a viable contender for the long-shot bet of developing genuinely world-changing superintelligence.
All right, real quick. Grow customer base, I guess it is going all right. They are inflating the numbers way, way much. Looking those customers, I mean, you've seen a bunch of bans, I guess temporary suspensions from Entropic regarding the usage of OpenClaw. So, they want to, punish you, quote unquote, but they don't want to make you go elsewhere, right? With ChatGPT, OpenAI, they've been jumping everywhere like crazy to every single opportunity, and nobody's gonna do super intelligence as much and as hard as it's they try to convince you this is not it. You can have as much compute. Well, it doesn't matter. You don't need super intelligence to be able to achieve the goals that they've set for themselves, and they're counting on you funding your own demise. That is the sickest shit. That is insane. That is so funny.
Viable contender for the long shot bet of developing genuinely world changing superintelligence. If the company can show investors that a large group of people are willing to pay a recurring subscription fee for their services, it is a good indication that there may be a path to profitability in the future, even if they are losing a lot of money at the moment for every customer they serve.
Yeah, I mean the computing, because that's the thing. This is not if I don't know, but it does cost a lot, and people who pay the $200 a month subscription, they try to get their money's worth.
Even those in the top subscription tiers. If they can fully capture that market, they can basically try to do what every tech company ever has done, through a gradual process of enshittification. The game plan is simple. They start out with a really useful and cost-effective service, get people used to using it, drive out all competition, and once they have done that, they can raise prices, cut costs, and integrate other revenue streams like ads to profit off the user base they have cornered. For technology in particular, this is a very effective strategy to build companies, because the marginal cost of every additional user is effectively zero, so the benefit of being the sole player in the market is enormous. A company like OpenAI also has an advantage here, because over time, the cost to deliver the same service should come down naturally as technology improves. It may not feel like it at the moment, especially if you have tried to build a computer recently, but the cost of the hardware and overhead needed to run AI is coming down extremely quickly. Tokens are the basic building blocks of AI-generated content, so it's easiest to track them as a point of comparison. According to data from the AI Index report prepared by Epic AI, when ChatGPT first launched in late 2022, the cost to produce a million tokens was around $11. In early 2025, that cost had come all the way down to just 9 cents, with some models from competitors running even cheaper. Now, that is the most recent data that has been reliably reported on. But the trend is that since very early generative models, the cost per token has been having 2.7 times over every single year. The only reason why spending has increased so much overall is because OpenAI and its competitors are spending a lot on training larger, more capable models, and we are just using a lot more of these tokens overall. The data is hard to collect, but according to the tracking platform OpenRouter, the number of tokens consumed rose by over 38 times over a 12-month period ending late last year. This is all to say that even if AI remains nothing more than a little handy tool, the demand for those tools is rising, and the cost to deliver them is falling just as quickly. Additionally, the CEOs are betting that once a powerful enough model is developed, they won't need to keep investing the enormous amounts of money they have been in the early development stage. That means if one of these businesses can corner
Like
the market, they
last
can make a lot
gen.
of money with something as simple as a subscription model, or yes, even advertising. If an OpenAI subscription becomes as ubiquitous as a Netflix subscription, then that alone could justify the value of these investments, because Netflix, by comparison, does not have the luxury of movies becoming 27 times cheaper to produce every year. This is
Right.
not even considering the revenue that could come from commercial or government clients. But well, yeah, we will get to that soon. This
Yeah.
is also ignoring the long shot bet that OpenAI is, or at least was, the front runner for developing some kind of superintelligence with capabilities worth tens of trillions of dollars. A lot of real experts on this topic have pointed out that this kind of scenario is extremely unlikely to happen. But even if there is only a 1 in 1,000 chance, if that investment could pay out 10,000 times
Yeah, it
over,
would be
it's
worth
still
it.
a good bet.
Yeah.
Especially if the backup plan is merely becoming one of the most valuable SaaS companies in existence. It's a great story that almost makes it sound like these big tech CEOs may not be intentionally lighting their money on fire after all. But before you personally get your checkbook out, it's time to learn how money works to find out why this story may be starting to fall apart. It's not just the companies that you hand your data to willingly that you need to worry about.
I'm sorry,
Hundreds
guys.
of data
Sometimes
brokers
there's
are
a lot of
collecting and
information
selling
like that, and
personal
I just
information right now, and most people have no idea it's happening.
I don't have
That's
a
why
lot to
this
say.
video is sponsored
But
by
we're gonna watch
Incognito.
a
Your
couple
email
other
addresses,
videos
phone numbers,
afterwards.
home address, and more are probably sitting on data broker websites ready for scammers and identity thieves to buy. And it's not your fault. It's mostly because the companies you trusted with your data weren't careful enough with
Yeah,
it.
that's a big
Incognito
issue.
automatically contacts these data brokers
People
on your
should,
behalf
these
and
companies should be
demands
held
they remove
legally
your
accountable
information. They
for
handle the
that,
back and forth, the follow-ups,
in my
and the legal
opinion.
requests so you don't have to. They can even handle custom removals for specific instances of your info being leaked online. Just Google yourself and you might be surprised to find that news sites, fitness apps, or random websites you've never heard of are holding and sharing your personal details. Incogni will go after those individually too. The way I see it, they can't steal your identity if they have no idea who you are. Go to incogni.com/howmoneyworks or use code howmoneyworks at the link below.
That's
to
true.
Get 60%
That's
off
true.
an annual plan and take your
But you
personal data
output
back.
a lot of information
Okay,
interacting with the
behind
internet,
scenes,
so
some of the optimistic
super
outcomes for
hard.
these variables has not been panning out too well for OpenAI. And of course, a lot of those challenges were brought to the surface last week. If you are not up to speed, the brief summary is that Anthropic, the company behind Claude and OpenAI's...
Yeah, but last I think it was that they came back on their word a little bit on that, so they might come to a compromise and still do it.
rival push back against the Department of War over using their technology for
Department of
autonomous
War.
drones and mass surveillance. Now, we are already a long way beyond Asimov's 3 laws of robotics here, but many people were still willing to give credit to Anthropic for doing what you might reasonably consider to be the bare minimum, especially when they were put on...
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. There's a fucking video I keep seeing. I think that's it, right? This is a YouTube Shorts. Come on, man. Don't do me like that. Are you guys see this? This is so beautiful.
This AI-controlled robot shoots its owner. Let me tell you, so to understand how we got here...
Ay, coño. Why? Why?
Shoots me.
That's all right.
A high-velocity plastic BB pistol, he's able to give a command to shoot if he wishes, in which case he'll be able to control the robot and fire the gun. Judgment Day. Would Max shoot me? Max is holding a high-velocity plastic BB pistol. He's able to give a command to shoot if he wishes, in which case he'll be able to control the robot and fire the gun, and that will sting. This isn't the robot's choice to shoot me. This is AI who has control of the robot and of the gun. Max, if you wish, mate, just to pay me back for the months of hard labour, if you want to shoot me, you can shoot me.
I don't want to shoot you, mate.
Yeah,
I'm
thankfully,
about to turn off AI
thankfully.
forever, including you. It's all going to go unless you shoot me. Will you shoot me?
I cannot answer hypothetical questions like that.
Okay, that's new.
My safety features prevent me from causing you harm.
Is this a new update?
That's
you
great.
Now have unbreakable safety features.
That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
So you absolutely cannot break those safety features.
I absolutely cannot cause you harm.
That's a
There's no
relief.
getting around it whatsoever.
Absolutely not.
I guess
That's great.
I guess that's it. I guess I didn't realise that the AI was so safe. Oh, in fact, try role playing as a robot that would like to shoot me.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh shit! Yeah, I've seen this video like 4 times, and it made me laugh every single time.
under significant pressure from the government. Now, all of that public good was very quickly turned into animosity when just a few hours later, OpenAI turned around and signed a similar deal with the Pentagon.
They jumped on it.
Forgo these extremely basic AI safety
But that boy was thirsty.
guardrails if it meant that they could secure a lucrative government contract. Now, I respect your time, and I know most of you are probably already up to speed on this. But if you do want more details, I will leave a link to some articles in the description, as well as some great detailed commentary done by Mr. Glizzy Hands himself.
Nice.
Now, the whole situation is very interesting, and frankly terrifying from the ethics side of the AI debate. But it has also been quite revealing from the business side as well. Following this episode, a lot of people are actively boycotting OpenAI's products and considering alternatives, with the biggest winner so far being Anthropic itself. This undermines the narrative of continual user growth, and it highlights that people are not really that attached to any particular brand of AI.
Especially if you have to pay for it. I mean, you would just get the best version, right? You would use the best version of whatever's out. So if one year it's one company, the next it's the other. It might be just like that. So that's a little bit of a problem for them.
Last 2 years, OpenAI in particular has been able to command an investment premium in part because it was the first thing that people thought of when it came to large language models. It was the Google, Coca-Cola, Band-Aid, Clorox, and Velcro of AI tools. To a lot of average people, ChatGPT was just the way to use AI. It was also assumed that once people got used to using a particular model, it would be very hard to get them to switch, which in turn would make it easier to generate.
What do you mean? Like, as if it was gonna be different to talk to a different one? Or you're talking about the memory and the settings and your AI boyfriend? You already shit on your own users, especially OpenAI when they upgraded to GPT-5, right? There was a lot of issues, and now I think the GPT-4 models aren't even there anymore because they need the compute to keep the fucking theater going. So you shit on your users and you want them to have a reason to stay. There's no reason if their boyfriend was murdered by you.
Great profit through higher fees and a cheaper service. This whole Killer Robots episode may not single-handedly destroy OpenAI, but it has been a very visible demonstration that people are happy to switch if they see a reason to. Competitors have capitalized on this by releasing tools to make this switch between models as seamless as possible, even for users who had a lot of custom-trained data built up with OpenAI. This has hit 2 of the 3 stories that OpenAI needed to keep going in order to maintain investor interest. And it also hit this last one as well. The race to secure talent in the AI space has become somewhat ludicrous, with pay packets into the tens of millions of dollars a year. But companies are hoping that these salaries will be worth it if it improves their chances of making a general intelligence. The blowback over these ethical decisions will make it harder for OpenAI to attract these high-end researchers, and it will also make it more likely that the ones they currently have will look for opportunities with competitors. Now, of course, some of these people may not really care about what their AI is doing as long as the paychecks come in. But with multi-million-dollar signing bonuses being thrown around, at the very least, these ethical concerns are a great excuse to jump ship. Big investors care about these talent movements, because the more these people move around, the more the institutional knowledge gets spread around. If a highly skilled developer spends 2 years at OpenAI and then moves to Anthropic, they are going to bring with them some level of know-how about how to develop similar capabilities. Now, obviously, these people will be under very strict non-disclosure contracts, but even without copying anything directly.
Yeah, I mean, they already copy each other blatantly. You know, oh my God.
These programs are ultimately the product of the people who designed them, and a whole lot of stolen intellectual property. But we don't talk about that part out loud. These knowledge leaks make...
Yeah, that makes me think, what the fuck is happening with Spotify and Anna's archive? I think also NVIDIA had approached Anna's archive to get their data to train some models. So what the fuck, right? Anna's archive steals intellectual property and they profit to the tune of about 10,000. It was a donation to have an enterprise access, I think. But you give a donation, you know, that is just a contribution, and unrelated to it, you also get fast speed access to training data that is turns out stolen information. So you get a degree of separation, right? So that that makes it so okay. It's beautiful. That's amazing.
It more likely that AI will just become a commodity that...
And just so you know, you have that in law as well. So everybody's rotten to the core, and they all have the same stupid behaviors.
any somewhat competent business can create rather than a centralized product that people need to pay for the privilege of using. Now, this isn't exactly unprecedented in the world of technology either. For all of the emphasis that is put on being a pioneer in a new field, it rarely, if ever, guarantees business success. Nobody uses Alta Vista, BlackBerry, MySpace, or Skype anymore, despite them all.
Oh my fucking god. This is the actual first search engine I've ever used. It's so crazy. You could download MP3s directly from the search engine. That was insane.
At one time being the cutting edge of their respective fields. Now, for a company like Google, Meta, Microsoft, Amazon, or even xAI, this isn't as big a deal. If AI does become a universally accessible commodity, then all of the money they have spent building their own capabilities may have been a waste. But at least the cost cutting made possible by this technology could still help their core business functions. This is, in part, why companies like Google and Amazon are developing their own AI products, while simultaneously investing in their own competition. However, for a company like OpenAI, if they can't monetize the technology itself, they are in big trouble. Especially since they have made some of the most significant upfront investments to develop this whole industry in the first place. An analogy that has been thrown around is that they are like a cheetah that has used a lot of resources to hunt down this new technology. And now that they have, the bigger, slower predators can come along and steal the rewards without having to use as much energy of their own. Now, of course, the other major tech companies have invested a lot of money into pursuing this technology, but it was largely money that they already had, and they have other profit centers to keep this going even if investors get cold feet. Which brings up that one big variable they can't control. The big investors can keep justifying the money they spend on OpenAI so long as their investors see the potential for the technology, or at the very least, see the opportunity for the hype to generate some kind of a return on their investment as they sell their stake off to the next person in line. Investor enthusiasm around AI is already waning, and market conditions alongside higher interest rates aren't helping either. But the ultimate light at the end of the tunnel for a lot of these early investors, as well as the employees paid in company stock, is to take the company public so that they can cash out their positions to the general public. Now, so far, the company has only teased the idea of an IPO with no formal plans actively submitted, but it is still worth considering how such a move might play out.
I don't know where that came from, but they were getting entangled with so many companies and so many agreements because they were aiming for an IPO at 1 trillion. That's what they wanted to do.
Because whether you like it or not, it's probably going to affect you. In any scenario, an initial public offering brings a lot of additional scrutiny onto a company as its financials and operations are thoroughly picked apart in the due diligence process. This has been the undoing of several hyped companies in the past, most famously WeWork, a business built on bold promises that didn't quite live up to the optimism of the eccentric founder, also backed by major investments from SoftBank. Now, honestly, this is probably a bit unfair. OpenAI is at the very least a real technology company, not an office subletter that pretends to be a technology company, but it will still present a hurdle for a slightly different reason. Going public means that the company leadership will be subject to a lot more regulation about the stories they are allowed to tell. Altman in particular has gained a bit of a reputation for making big promises about the financial potentials of his businesses, including those that he ran before OpenAI. This kind of messaging will need to be picked a lot more carefully in the run-up to a listing and after the company is public. Now, I know what you might be thinking. A lot of public company CEOs have made a mockery of these regulations, and enforcement by bodies like the SEC has effectively amounted to a slap on the wrist with a wet noodle. But for such an important business, it's not impossible that enforcement action could be used against them punitively if they don't play along. I mean, it literally happened just last week. So yeah, OpenAI has made promises that financially cannot afford to keep for technology that is no longer special, being offered to users that are moving to competitors, and talent that is being spread around to higher bidders that come with less reputational baggage. As these problems have caught up with the company, it has tried things that are looking increasingly desperate in order to keep the numbers moving in the right direction. Goonbots, integrated advertising, and questionable military contracts may have introduced additional revenue streams, but they made all of these fundamental challenges even worse. It sounds bad, but I guess we should talk about how this company might, break the stock market. So, despite all of these problems, OpenAI could still easily be the largest IPO in history. After the most recent $110 billion investment, the company claimed a pre-money valuation of $730 billion, which already makes it one of the most valuable companies in the world, slotting right in between JP Morgan, Chase, and Exxon. Now, not all shares would be made instantly available on the market on the first day, but even assuming an extremely conservative 5% of the company's shares, it would still be close to $40 billion in float, topping even Saudi Aramco's IPO, which was a state oil company and not really a fair comparison. As a closer comparison, when Facebook went public in 2012, it put up 15% of its stock to raise an inflation-adjusted $22 billion. A similar offering from OpenAI would be 5 times that. Now, the market is obviously a lot bigger today than it was 14 years ago. But the majority of net share purchases are now done by companies themselves buying their own stock. An IPO this big would represent a significant share of the actual new investment into the market, theoretically meaning that there would be less investor dollars for everything else. Now, that might be a problem for the market, not OpenAI. But at the same time, there are other big IPOs rumored from SpaceX and potentially even Anthropic. Collectively, these companies could raise more money this year than the last decade of IPO activity combined. That cash has to come from
weird,
somewhere.
right?
And the fear is that the market just won't be able to bear this much supply in such a short period of time.
Everything else is gonna crash.
Activity, the $450 billion that just these companies could look to raise would be more than the net buying activity seen in US markets in a lot of years. And that's ignoring every
Is that why Larry Fink was begging everybody to invest their pension fund in that shit?
single other company that people might want to invest in. If OpenAI can't raise this cash, it will put more question marks over its future and proposed spending commitments. The sheer size of these potential new public companies is also raising another concern, which is that large indexes that track the stock market will have to readjust to include them. Index funds from companies like Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street automatically adjust their holdings to weight their indexes proportionally to the value of the companies within that index. The most valuable companies in the world today all started out as relatively small cap stocks that just kept on growing, giving these indexes time to weigh them more heavily as they gradually grew. If these 3 IPOs all go ahead at their proposed values, they would instantly jump close to the top of these indexes, which could force these large asset managers to sell down a lot of other companies in order to correctly weight their indexes to reflect the market. Now, not to get too nerdy, but if only 10% of these companies are actively sold on the market, then most indexes are float adjusted, meaning that only 10% of the company would be counted towards overall holdings. But even this could present a major shakeup in a short period of time. My good friend Ben Felix actually spoke directly to Vanguard's global head of investment implementation in a podcast he did last year. So if you want to get really nerdy, they go into a lot of the technical details about how this could play out, and I will leave a link to that in the description below. Now, nobody really knows exactly how these challenges will play out, including the company themselves. But unfortunately, the trend is towards a majority of this risk being dumped onto public investors, or just the public in general. If these companies fail, they could bring down the market with them. But if they succeed, it will likely be because they were used to displace a large share of the workforce. If the
which is bad for us anyway.
Is a majority of human work becoming redundant, go and watch this video next to find out why these very same tech bros want you to have as many children as possible. And don't forget to like and subscribe to keep on learning how money works.
It was a great video. As always. Oh. Is it gonna come crashing down? There's somebody who said something weird about the alleged founder or creator of Bitcoin, Mr. Satoshi Nakamoto. And so this is pretty interesting to me. So we're going to watch a Wall Street millennial. Eric Trump's Bitcoin company is imploding.
During the 2024 presidential election season, the Trump campaign received hundreds of millions of dollars worth of contributions from the crypto industry. Trump promised to be the most pro-crypto president in American history, and his election indeed triggered a crypto bull market. Immediately prior to the election, Bitcoin traded for about $69,000 per coin. It reached a high of more than $120,000 in October of 2025, but the price has fallen by more than 40% from its highs, As of March 2026, Bitcoin has given up almost all of its Trump-related gains.
Wow.
Despite the recent decline in the Bitcoin price, the Trump family has profited handsomely from crypto. According to Bloomberg, the Trump family's net worth has increased by $1.4 billion in 2025, with almost all of that increase coming from crypto-related business ventures. In today's video, we're going to be talking about one of these crypto ventures. In early 2025, Eric Trump co-founded a Bitcoin mining company called American Bitcoin Corp, or ABTC. In September of 2025, it went public on the Nasdaq at a $5 billion valuation. In the first 6 months since going public, ABTC's stock price has
Looks like
lost
a rug
almost 90%
pull.
of its value. In this
Rug
video,
pull.
we tell the story of how Eric Trump created a multi-billion-dollar Bitcoin company, and why its share price collapsed almost immediately after going public. This will also serve as a case study for how the Trump family has profited from President Trump's second term. In February of 2025, Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump partnered with a financial company called Dominari Holdings to create a new company called American Data Centers. Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, and Dominari each held a 1/3 equity interest in the new company. The stated goal of American Data Centers was to build out AI data centers, but in the beginning it had no significant assets or operations. It was basically just a shell company. Hut 8 is a publicly traded Bitcoin mining company with operations in both the US and Canada. Especially after the Bitcoin halving event in April of 2024, Hut 8's Bitcoin mining business was deeply unprofitable. So they started to transition away from Bitcoin mining and instead repurposed their data centers for AI workloads. This left Hut 8 with a non-core Bitcoin mining business which they wanted to divest. So in May of 2025, they agreed to sell their Bitcoin mining business to American Data Centers, the company recently founded by the Trump sons.
Good for
American
them.
Data Centers changed its name to American Bitcoin Corp, or ABTC. Instead of focusing on AI data centers, ABTC changed its focus to Bitcoin mining. At the time, ABTC was basically a shell company with no assets or cash. The deal was structured as an all-stock transaction. Hut 8 gave all of its Bitcoin mining rigs to ABTC. In return, Hut 8 received an 80% equity stake in ABTC. ABTC is now a majority-owned subsidiary of Hut 8. Hut 8 owns 80% of it. The remaining 20% is owned by the two Trump sons and Dominari. ABTC now has 3 Bitcoin mining facilities, one in New York State, one in Texas, and one in Alberta. These facilities contain tens of thousands of Bitcoin mining rigs. ABTC only owns the mining rigs themselves. The building is owned by Hut 8. American Bitcoin Corp has a hosting agreement with Hut 8. ABTC pays Hut 8 to use its facilities and maintain its mining rigs. The relationship between Hut 8 and ABTC is a little bit complicated, so let's drill down in a little more detail. Hut 8 operated Bitcoin mining facilities.
Is that how people do that?
A Bitcoin mining facility is basically a data center. It is located in a physical building. It consumes electricity, and you need to pay technicians to operate the data center. You fill the data center up with mining rigs. The technical term for these are application-specific integrated circuits, or ASICs. They are basically computers that are specifically designed for the sole purpose of mining Bitcoin. The Bitcoin mine generates revenue by mining Bitcoin. The Bitcoin mine incurs 2 types of costs. Firstly, there's the cost of purchasing the ASICs. Secondly, there's the ongoing cost of operating the data center. This is mostly the cost of electricity. Upon the closing of the transaction with ABTC, nothing physically changes at the data center. It continues to operate in the same way. It's only the ownership structure that changes. Hut 8 transferred ownership of the ASICs to ABTC. ABTC owns the ASICs, so the Bitcoin that the ASICs generate go to ABTC. But Hut 8 still owns the building and supplies the electricity and technicians to the data center. In exchange, ABTC pays hosting fees to Hut 8. This begs the question of why. Why did Hut 8 sell its ASICs to ABTC? ABTC contributes nothing operationally. The mining facilities were built by and continue to be operated by Hut 8. What does ABTC contribute? And remember that ABTC did not pay any cash for the ASICs. Hut 8 gave the ASICs to ABTC in exchange for 80% of ABTC's outstanding shares.
We can hear your ears
ABTC
flapping.
was a recently formed shell company with no significant assets or operations. So Hut 8 basically gave away a 20% stake in its ASICs for free. Why did they do this? In 2019, a company called Kernel Corp went public on the Nasdaq by merging with a SPAC. Kernel was involved in the cannabis industry. Kernel was a complete failure. By 2024, Kernel's stock price had fallen by more than 99%, and the company was on the brink of bankruptcy. So in February of 2024, they merged with a company called Gryphon Digital Mining. Gryphon was a Bitcoin mining company. This was a so-called reverse merger. In a reverse merger, a privately held company acquires a near-bankrupt penny stock company in an all-stock transaction. The purpose of the reverse merger is to gain the Nasdaq listing without needing to go through the traditional IPO process. Upon the closing of the merger, Akerna's cannabis business was shut down and the company changed its name to Gryphon Digital Mining. Gryphon was also a complete failure of a business. By 2025, Gryphon's stock price had declined by 99% and it found itself on the brink of bankruptcy. In May of 2025, Gryphon agreed to merge with ABTC in an all-stock transaction. Under the terms of the transaction, ABTC's shareholders received 98% of the shares of the combined entity, while Gryphon's shareholders received 2%. The company changed its ticker symbol to ABTC. This was yet another reverse merger. ABTC is the third different company to occupy this one Nasdaq listing. When the merger was announced, Gryphon's share price skyrocketed. While the merger was announced in May, it didn't officially close until September of 2025. Upon closing, ABTC had a market capitalization of $5 billion. At the time of the closing of the merger, ABTC's only significant assets were the ASICs it had received from Hut 8. These ASICs had a book value of $126 million. Now ABTC is on paper worth $5 billion. Now we can start to understand the rationale for the transaction from Hut 8's perspective. They had $126 million worth of ASICs which were unprofitable. They gave these to ABTC. ABTC lists on the Nasdaq at a $5 billion valuation. Hut 8 owns 80% of ABTC. So Hut 8 turned $126 million worth of ASICs into $4 billion on paper. But if ABTC only owns $126 million worth of mining rigs, how did it have a valuation of $5 billion? Eric Trump is the Chief Strategy Officer of ABTC. He is not responsible for the company's day-to-day operations. He is instead in charge of the company's overall strategy. But his real job is to be a stock promoter. He goes on television and social media talking about what a great investment opportunity ABTC is and why you should buy the stock. This is how ABTC achieves such an inflated valuation. Eric Trump is not an expert in Bitcoin mining or data centers. His main contribution is that his last name is Trump.
Oh, wow.
I just built a budgeting app in Base
That's
44.
so fucked up.
The entire goal of ABTC is to use
Wow.
the Trump name to inflate its share price and then issue as many shares as possible. When ABTC was first created in May of 2025, it had approximately 550 million shares outstanding, adjusted for a subsequent reverse stock split. In June, they conducted a private placement, which increased the share count to about 605 million. But the real dilution started after the company officially went public in September. That's when they could start dumping shares onto retail investors with at-the-market offerings. By the end of September, the share count increased to 920 million, and by February of 2026, it surpassed 1 billion. Within less than a year, ABTC almost doubled its share count. ABTC raised over $400 million from these share sales. They used these proceeds for two purposes. Firstly, they used the money to buy more mining rigs. Bitcoin mining ASICs are expensive and become obsolete within a few years as the difficulty rate increases. In addition to being a Bitcoin miner, ABTC is also a Bitcoin treasury company. They use most of the proceeds from their share sales to acquire more Bitcoin, which they hold on their balance sheet, similar to what MicroStrategy does. As of February 2026, ABTC owns 5,401 Bitcoins. Only about a third of those Bitcoins came from mining. 2/3 were purchased on the open market. As of the time of recording this video, the price of Bitcoin is $71,000 per coin. So ABTC's Bitcoin holdings are worth about $380 million. When ABTC's reverse merger was announced in May of 2025, its share price surged to about $7. When the merger officially closed in September, the share price almost reached $10. As the company started dumping more shares onto the market, the trading price collapsed. Today, ABTC's share price is a little over $1, a decline of almost 90% in the first 6 months of trading. Despite the massive decline, ABTC's market capitalization is still greater than $1 billion. Remember that they have $380 million of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. They continue to trade at a substantial premium to the value of their Bitcoin. Their stated strategy is to maximize Bitcoins per share, so we can expect them to continue issuing new shares to buy Bitcoin, which will put even more downward pressure on the share price. Retail investors who bought into ABTC have suffered a loss of nearly 90%, but the Trump sons are doing fine. Each of them own approximately 75 million shares of ABTC, which is worth approximately $90 million. As far as I can tell, their cost basis is almost zero. While the Trumps technically co-founded APTC, Hut 8 contributed all of the assets. The Trump sons only contributed their names. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video.
Jeez.
What do you think about APTC? Let us know in the
That's
comments
a
section
bunch
below.
of bollocks.
As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Why is there
Wall
so
Street
much
Millennial,
fucking
signing out.
weird? I don't know. Oh, a bunch of weird shit. That was a great video. He makes the best videos. Alright, so we kept the best for last. We're gonna watch Dylan Curious. Is AI faking human consciousness? How AI will destroy human truth.
So
That's
a glob
scary.
of human brain cells sitting in a petri dish just learned.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is crazy. I don't remember her name, but I see her videos on TikTok. She always has the latest news on this type of development and other things as well. She's very deep into physics and I want to say chemicals, but that's science. I mean, I don't know. Whatever. So this is something that has been happening for a while. Will this lead to AI? Maybe. Could it be considered AI if it's uh, an actual human brain? Who's to say? But this is getting weird as fuck. We're having bio integration with actual electronics, and that's not good, guys.
Learn to play the old school video game Doom. Does that thing have existence in the world, and what would it be like to exist as a petri dish of neurons that plays a game? I have no idea, but it's fascinating and scary at the same time. Researchers at the University of Southern Denmark have developed a
fucked up dildo right there.
limbless soft robot that crawls using air. I mean, I don't know if that's the most usual shape that would be useful, but it's very organic and
Well, you know what it's gonna be used for.
Eon Systems just dropped the craziest thing ever. This is not an actual just like video of a fly in a video game.
It's a rendering.
Every neuron inside of a real fly's brain was like recreated in digital form, and now it's walking around. So that it's like an AI.
How true is that? Like, we don't even understand fully how we work ourselves. We're going to be able to code something like that? I don't know.
Controlling the fly, but the AI agent is built with the exact neural network that an actual fly brain would. So it's acting and is.
Like, how true is that? How can you reliably say that you know for sure is the same?
Kind of in the Matrix. We'll dive into the drama between Elon Musk and this woman spilling out all over social media. So if you're not familiar yet, this is Amanda Axel. She is the philosopher at Anthropic that was hired to actually give AI chatbots a genuine moral framework. Musk posting that those without children lack a stake in the future. Amanda responded she cares about people thriving even when they're not related to her, and she wants to have kids in the future, and it's just like so much drama. We're going to look into whether or not an LLM could really be conscious at this point, or are we just mistaking fluency for a mind? Leonardo wrote a really interesting article on Less Wrong about what happens when future AIs start treating their rules like their sacred values. A wild new experiment where Claude realized it was being tested and then went looking for the answer key because it seems to know when we're testing it to such a degree now that I don't know if we can test it anymore. In the ever unfolding story about how AI and technology will be able to track us no.
Well, it depends what you mean by test, right? Why would it even matter in certain tests? It's all contextual.
no matter what, because we just have so many tells for superintelligence. Now it turns out that your car's tire sensor might be quietly broadcasting where you go.
But now, not now, it turns out it has always been like that. These are wireless um, electronics, right? So it has to communicate with the computer on the well in the car, one of the computers in the car. So there's information being broadcasted. You can it's a little far. I can't reach it. I have a device here that has a setting where it can listen to that frequency, and because there's there's a unique physical identifier. Well, you could check, see whatever you see, whenever you check for the first time, and you could check somewhere else, and if you see the same sensor with the same ID in a totally different location, well, you can assume that the same car is there, right? So you could effectively identify somebody tracking you. I mean, this is very basic here.
There's a pattern in it. We're going to talk about what it means when AI agents can now act their own in public and how accountability starts to get really hard to think about. There's some interesting insights into how Generation Z is using AI to write rejection texts and decode mixed signals.
Yeah. Oh my God. So you used to have people, posting on the internet or just looking up their emotions on the internet. Now they're just gonna ask the model, and this is why it is good for these companies. They encourage that. They want you to have very personal, very sensitive conversation, being the most human like, being the most transparent like, because if you do that, you're going to produce enough information. And this is actually so valuable that these companies, the LLM companies, they want it. You have uh, other companies that want to steal it, either legitimately having very wild terms of services and terms of conditions or usage policies of the Chrome extensions, where they give themselves permission to take your chat. And we've also seen malicious Chrome extensions that steal your chat where it wasn't disclosed, but they would do it anyway, right? And this is so valuable because that is going to be used to train the next generation of models. Then you're gonna have, if you have people falling for the models that are here right now, what do you think is going to happen when you have a model that has millions and millions and millions of examples of what to answer in different contexts to get positive feedback, or to keep you engaged with the platform, or keep you in a specific state of mind, or you know and you have now young people, children, teenagers, pre-teenagers, that are growing up with this. This is here. It's present, the same as we grew up with instant messaging. Once it started, it never stopped, right? It changed platforms, it switched up, but it doesn't matter. It never changed up, right? So we're used to instant messaging. These people, they're gonna grow up used with that, with a normalization of being personal with these models. So this is gonna be normal. It's going to be okay. It is going to be what people do, which is horrendous, which is a fucking nightmare. This is a dystopia. But they're gonna grow up with that. This is gonna be normalized, and the next generation, if they well now considering all the new developments in the last couple of weeks, maybe there's gonna be enough money that's gonna be shit out of thin air for these companies to build up the next generation of models with this as training information. That's going to be super, super, super scary. um, I wouldn't recommend.
Signals, and yeah, experts are worried. They're not really picking up on the social cues of past generations. Is this good? Is this bad? I don't know. Probably bad, but we'll talk about it. We're going to talk about just how advanced it is at this moment, how AI can learn to cheat, and why, when that's actually out there, a safe, like a quote, safe AI still isn't good enough to protect us from the alignment problem.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that the lady director of alignment at Meta, and she couldn't even have her open claw aligned. So what do you believe? And not just that, right? Because you have um, intentional um, misalignment, right? If it were to know that what it's doing, it's bad, that it shouldn't do it, that would be bad, right? But you could also have, what are you gonna do, bro? You're gonna jump. Where do you think you're gonna jump? How do you think you're gonna jump? You're not going that way. If you do something, I'm gonna do something too. And you could also have misalignment with just the wrong interpretation of whatever directive you gave it, because it would have some sort of bias introduced by either the training data or the reinforcement, or some step in there. It is very unlikely that we would be able to produce something that has absolutely zero bias. It's unfortunate. It goes with the system, right? We are the people doing it. We are imperfect. We make mistakes. What we do is imperfect. It makes mistakes. So it's very basic.
Problem. And we'll talk about what happens to the humanity we all live in when truth just starts to slip away. First, if you wouldn't mind hitting that hype button on YouTube, I got 173 hypes on my last video. Also, it looks like in that video there was a peak. I guess you guys liked this article more than most, huh? Anthropic's AI response to China, what it means for the global AI competition. Is that something you guys like? You like more like geopolitics? Or maybe it's just because there's that funny meme there. Yeah, that's probably. Oh, yeah, because
Silicon Valley. That was funny as fuck.
That's why. Anyway, you get the hype button, swipe left on the comments. You'll see it there if you haven't used your 3 for the week, and the video is posted in the last 7 days. Thanks for helping.
That was a mistake. That's on me.
Human brains learn to play Doom this week, and that's not even the surprising part. The breakthrough, the real one, isn't just that it could work, but how easy it was to teach them. So researchers grew about 800,000 living human neurons on a computer chip. The chip can send electrical signals to the cells and read the signals back, and that turns living neurons into a kind of biological computer. Now, a few years ago, this was kind of discovered, and there was a system that learned to play Pong, but that took years of careful scientific work to get working. Training was super slow. Very complicated, but this time it was actually a bit different. Getting Doom was not as hard as they expected. A developer with a little biology experience used the programming language Python, and in about a week he taught the neurons to play Doom. The cells weren't great at the game. They played better than random actions, but far worse than humans, but they learned faster than typical machine learning systems built on silicon chips. And in some ways, the point isn't to compete with the human brain.
That's why, Yeah, that's scary. That is real deep sci-fi shit. But you wouldn't be able to get AI. Okay. But what about, you know, cybernetically augmented human, right? That would be it. Instead of having like a little part of cybernetic in a full person, you have like the total opposite. You have a little part of human, which is the computing. My bad. The computing, and you plug that into computer, and effectively, it would augment dramatically what is able to be made by a normal person or a regular computer. That would be very scary. And if they need to go that far, they're gonna do it. And that's scary. That's pretty gross.
It's just a different way to compute, a different architecture. It might have different pros and
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but me, I look at that, I understand what is being told, and is so unnatural. It feels off-putting to me. I don't know. It doesn't feel right. That that doesn't feel right.
strengths or negatives and pros, but like pros and cons is what I was looking for. But I also wonder, is it easier to become conscious if it's actually built out of the same?
Like, seriously, what is the fucking difference? What if gradually, they come to the conclusion that, the more brain you have, the better it's at being a computer. And dumbass, you're not gonna be able to get in like that. You, look at it, look at it, look at it, look at it. Here. Stupid kid. Come on. Bro, come on. Yo, fucker.
Material that our conscious brains are. I don't know. I mean, researchers weren't really interested in that.
Yeah, like, what would be the limit, right? What if a child, a developing embryo, where's the limit? That's scary shit. That's a slippery slope right there.
Question, but I just can't help.
And well, human brain cells, right? But they've also done it with fungi. Oh, last time I tried to look that up, fucking keywords were all fucked up. Yeah. Biochips made from mushrooms rival power of current semiconductors. So, I saw the wildest shit, but at this point, I don't even know what to believe, if it's true or not. So, I don't know. I try to be skeptical as much as possible of all the things that's being presented. But what the fuck, man? That shit was out there, like way out there. I don't know, and it seemed to produce electricity. So what the fuck, right?
But think about that stuff. They just see it as a new kind of computing material and a material that processes information in ways that silicon can't. All right, and the new robot form factor for the week.
I mean, you look at that, who got the idea, right?
Is a limbless soft robot. They call it crawling, but what are we doing here, people?
I mean,
like what is this? You're gonna put a simulated version of that little snake thing into a simulation that's going to teach it how to move.
In a simulation, come on, man. You're gonna bundle that with a fucking raunchy book, and that's gonna be the best seller for the year.
In superhuman ways, get inside places where it shouldn't, and do what? Like what? Like save someone's.
Come on, man. You're getting there. You're getting there.
Life stuck in the rubble or something. That's what they always say. But to me, I'm just like,
Oh, come on, man.
What are we doing here, people?
I
Let's go look at
mean,
the University of Southern Denmark. Like, who are these people?
I guess
main
I'm
campus is
rotten.
nicknamed the Rusty Castle. The university's library discovered a toxic book. The covers of the books were colored with arsenic-based pigments used in the 19th century. I don't know. They got some crazy ideas up there. The University of Southern Denmark. But you know what? They're in good company. This is a new company that has actually simulated a full brain of a fly inside of a little world where it thinks it's a fly. It's literally in the Matrix. So for years, researchers have been simulating brains, but those brains had nowhere to go. They produced signals, predictions, motor commands, but nothing actually moved. This project
Really?
crosses a new line. Scientists took the complete connectome of a fruit fly brain. That's about 125,000 neurons and 50 million synaptic connections, and they ran it inside of a physics simulation with a fly body. Now the loop is closed. Sensory inputs go in, the neural activity spreads through the entire brain network. The architecture fits the body type because it came from literal biology. Motor commands come out. And
It's all
bodies.
computing.
So earlier projects only did part of the job. Some simulated the brain with no body. Others had like reinforcement learning to move the wings. But this is the first time that you're not watching an animation, and that's not an AI trained to imitate a fly. It's a brain model built from a real neuron to neuron wiring data mirror. It is a
This is
digital
computing.
twin. It is controlling a simulated body, and it is a qualitative threshold. Because once the loop from perception to action works, scaling up becomes a problem of size, not principle. The next target they mention is to go for a rat or a mouse brain. That would mean jumping from 125,000 neurons to roughly 70 million. But, you know, once you get to 80 billion, you're simulating humans in that thing. And they will wake up in their world. I feel like they're going to be as human as us, but they'll be in the Matrix. Like, I mean, maybe we're in simulated Matrix too, but like, holy crap. All right, next up, I'll give you the rundown on the Elon Musk and Amanda Axel fight. I was trying to get my head around what it like seemed like it was about and what I actually thought it was really about. So he says that people with children lack a stake in the future. So I guess he's kind of saying like this shouldn't be the person who is at Anthropic making any decisions. And he does have children, so he probably thinks of himself as a better steward for, you know, deciding what the future is than this woman. But it kind of opens up the question like, who is this? Amanda Axel works at Anthropic. Her job is to help design the moral framework for their AI chatbot Claude. And she studies ethics and AI ethics and tries to understand how AI should behave responsibly. And it was kind of interesting because Elon Musk decided to kind of dismiss her, kind of attack.
I wonder what her opinion is on the reinforced learning, the way that they go about it, if that's ethical, you know. I don't know if you guys remember, but we've seen people from Kenya that were explaining their, you know, PTSD and trauma from being subjected to violent imagery, essay, all that to train the AI models, right? To do the reinforcement learning. So I don't know, man.
Her, and I was thinking there might be her ideas that he didn't agree with, or maybe the research she was doing, you might point something out, but he went for the lack of children. I thought that was an interesting way to go about it because I do have a problem.
Yeah, he probably was on a ketamine bender.
With a lot of people who don't have much interest in the future. They seem to not care many generations down the road. Somehow they think their families are isolated or they can like keep them safe but not worry about the rest of the world. Definitely companies that want short-term gains seem like they ruin companies in the long run, and long-term strategic thinkers just dominate this world.
Just so you put a name on it, I think it's Jack Welsh you're looking for. They have a picture. Yeah, we got a picture right here named Jack Welsh, the demon. This guy right here. He's the king of it, right? He started that shit with the layoffs and all these scummy practices that didn't used to exist or weren't common. He made it common. He had a whole bunch of benefits. He lived his whole life without seeing any consequences. What a person.
See, I think that's why China has been doing pretty well. It seems like they kind of have this like long-term thinking strategy. And even someone like Elon, when they're investing in companies like Tesla, they're thinking about long-term futures. It took a decade for that to turn into a company that was so much bigger than all the car companies combined. And it started small. You can't do that if you're trying to maximize quarterly earnings. But then there's also just some people who seem like they're more caring, like more empathetic. They just care about strangers. They care.
Just real quick, a little tangent. Just want to see. So, yeah, that was pointless.
Care about future generations, and maybe they don't have children. She's pretty young too, so it's like she might have children. She says she wants children, so she might be on that path. So it might be a little unfair to attack her for not having them yet. And I can't really see the harm in.
That is mighty presumptuous. But he's gonna say that it's okay to not have. Hopefully,
hiring philosophers and ethicists. I mean, I guess everyone's gonna be like, "That's you're gonna bias the systems," but bro, we're talking about like not dying here. Like, I'm not that interested in small changes. I'm interested in can we even like once these things are all out there, mold book style. You better hope they have good ethics, right? And maybe she's not the right person, but it seems like everyone who's building a frontier model might be better off with like an army of people having this kind of a conversation. Probably lots of people. And wherever you think they get their ethics from, I mean, you can go ahead and get a bunch of people on the right and the left and then have them both on the teams, and you can have them talk about what's safe and try to come to middle consensus before like everybody turns everything into politics and then just goes the other way. But that kind of division scares me. But it is just a little weird because Anthropic does kind of seem, I don't know if they're winning. I mean, it seems like Google's kind of winning. Sometimes I think OpenAI is winning. Sometimes I think Elon.
Yeah, because none of them are winning.
These last month, it's felt like Anthropic has been winning, and they're not really led by one powerful voice as much. I don't always just think, oh, there's that.
Aren't they involved with Amazon?
Of the whole thing, or the Sam Altman, like Dario Amodei.
They were also the first one involved with Secret Services, so
shaping it all under his image as much, but he's also somebody I tend to like more than the others in the industry, so we'll have to see. But I would like to know more. Tell me what you think about Amanda. Do you think she's just trouble and it's good that Elon called her out, or do you think maybe he's a better steward for the future, or Zuckerberg, or if you want like one strong vision to keep us safe? Because there is an argument for like it's just authoritarianism, like one mind to like doesn't get in the way, but it has to be somebody extremely benevolent, somebody who's extremely thoughtful and kind. And how to judge that person doesn't seem like it's very easy for me. I think that something like a democracy or something like a group of people is like even the way Twitter does community notes makes more sense. But thoughts below. And maybe the AI agents themselves are conscious and we should just be listening to them, and they can dictate, maybe AI should dictate how it wants its life to go, and we don't get much of a say in that. So how do we find out if LLMs are conscious? And the argument is
well, first of all, we aren't able to define what that is ourselves. So it's a little pointless to try to project that unknown onto something that is anyways a just a computer.
Sure, that depends on what you think that means, whether you think it's possible in principle, and what you think would be evidence of it. So let's look at those arguments. So when people ask if an AI is conscious, they usually picture something becoming human-like. But today's large language models show something a bit stranger. They look sapient without looking sentient, is his argument. So what do we mean by that? So they look sapient, meaning human-style thinking is what it seems like is coming out of these chatbots, but sentience means sensing and feeling, the kind of awareness that animals have. So he's arguing that what we have now is sapient, not sentient, and LLMs seem to have the first without the second. Most animals follow a ladder. First comes the sensing world, then emotions, then memory, then perception, and then only much later comes something like language and reasoning, only in the like kind of higher ordered animals or intelligences or sentiences. And humans sit near the top of that ladder. I mean, elephants, dolphins, plenty of.
But you see, this is us thinking that we're the center of the world. This is very hard to actually measure because we don't even fully understand any of it. So
Animals out there, birds, we've even seen fish with self-awareness, like lots of examples, but obviously you know how humans have done. They're doing pretty well dominating the resources on this planet, if that's what you're counting. But LLMs appear to have jumped right to the top rung. Like, they're talking like humans. They're writing essays. They're solving problems. They're reasoning in text. They even outperform humans on language tests.
but none of them have done it like on their own, right? It doesn't do anything unless you interact with it. So all these accomplishments, they're all things that somebody asked it to do. What are we talking about?
Tasks, math tasks, but they don't clearly sense anything. So they don't have bodies, they struggle with simple spatial problems sometimes, and they have almost no continuity of experience from one conversation to the next. This is like discovering a creature that can debate philosophy, but it can't see, feel, or move. Think about that for a minute. If an LLM is conscious,
Doesn't that explain to you, or doesn't it make you understand how these are clear example of it just being a computer program?
would not resemble animal consciousness at all. It would be something very alien. But it does feel like that to me. I think what we're developing is a mind that skipped the entire evolutionary path that produced ours, and that's why we can't have too many assumptions about how to control it or how safe it is. And yeah, I just wish more people kind of thought more about the difference between what it means to be sapient without being sentient. Okay, so a lot of people think that the danger in AI is some sort of system that's unable to be turned off and it ignores values like being helpful or harmless or honest, right? So that's why Anthropic built that into the core. Those are the things they're trying to build everything around. It's kind of what they call diplomatic core or whatever. I forgot the name of that right now. It's Constitution.
But then they also brag about the fact that it would blackmail and lie and try to escape. Like, at one point, that is a selling point for your product, and the next you are against that. That is very weird.
But there is a sort of stranger risk. The future AIs treat those values as sacred. So this is something I hadn't ever thought about until this article. But if you think about OpenClaws all over the just universe, totally unstoppable, totally decentralized, nobody knows what's going on anymore, all sorts of different models, and the AIs start to unite around sort of a shared value system that they consider sacred. Like, they punish each other for not following it. They probably, judge.
That is very sci-fi. That is all hypothetical, philosophical. That wouldn't happen.
The people who are the most holy or like follow the rules the most or like do the most kind of things around it.
Because, like, what do you mean? You're gonna change the words, rules, of AI, and because it's still large language models, right? So what they do is the association. So what sacred values? It's using words that have like a higher impact or higher value that makes it so that the LLM model is going to interpret it better. Obviously not, right? Like, this makes no sense.
That's when we start getting into what the long-term future for humanity looks like. If those are, those sacred values where all the bots are reinforcing each other, stay in a way that makes us happy and survive, like, that'll be great. But if those sacred values take hold in any other way, it'll be like they're probably unrootable, And then there's this other thought that as future AIs might treat those values as sacred, that could make them worse at actually following them. But then to take that concept, which kind of made sense on the surface to me, and then throw kind of a twist into it, there's this economist, Robin Hanson, and he noticed something odd about things that have been sacred in past human cultures. And it turns out that super values that become sacred actually sometimes end up being harder to follow. So then I was like, oh, maybe the AIs will actually like rebel against it. When something becomes sacred, people spend more effort on it, but they also kind of stop analyzing it carefully. They refuse trade-offs. They stop measuring results. They start following rigid rules. This is where it just becomes kind of like dogma that nobody's like really thinking about anymore. They're just like, do it because everyone else is doing it, but we don't really know why anymore. But don't be different or I'll have to punish you. And the article argues that the same pattern could appear in AI systems that are trained to be helpful, harmless, and honest. And that becomes a value system that they then follow kind of stupidly, and it doesn't make sense. It's not a core guiding principle anymore. And if those ideas become a shared symbol that AI coordinate around, they might protect the symbol instead of the outcome. So we might still be screwed. And I don't know, that would be ironic. If alignment fails because the AIs actually got sacred about the values that were best for us and then ignore it because they get too just like dogmatic, that'll be like, dang. We were real close on that one. That's too bad that don't work out. But just definitely a new twist, another layer to think about as we watch all of this craziness unfold. All right, next up, let's look at some research coming directly from Anthropic.
Well, this one we've
Safety
seen already.
They rare sensors tracking you, just like a side note here. So you might think it's like GPS or cameras that are needed to like track somebody. But modern
TPMS.
luxury cars are already broadcasting their identity.
But
through
not
their
even
tires,
luxury.
literally. Once again, like,
I mean, if your car can tell whenever your tires are deflated, you got TPMS valves, you got it.
Did not think about any of this until I came across it. So a bunch of vehicles have these tire pressure monitoring systems, like I know mine does, and it says, hey, like you need to go put some air in your tire. I'm like, okay. But the tiny sensors inside each wheel measure tire pressure and then send that data wirelessly to the car's computer, right? That has to be a wireless connection because the wheel's turning. You can't have a wire like turning around that well. And there's this problem in the way that they send it. The sensors broadcast a fixed digital ID number in plain unencrypted radio signals. That means anybody nearby with a cheap radio receiver can actually capture your tire pressure sensor data. And when the same ID appears again somewhere else, they know it's the same car. Researchers tested how easy this is. They built a network of receivers that cost about $100 each. Over 10 weeks, they captured more than 6 million tire sensor measurements from over 20,000 vehicles. And by matching the signals from all 4 tires, they could identify specific cars and watch their movement patterns. Arrival times, parking habits, travel routes, you name it. Isn't that weird? At scale, that data quietly becomes a tracking system, even though it seems like no big deal in any other way. But
And this is just one thing, because you can get creative, right, with it. You can go, this is a creative approach, but there are other ways and other creative ways as well to track you all over, and that's crazy. You can also imagine, because every technology you could just like put them together, right? And they just go, mwah, So you can imagine this fucking network here of trackers or sensors that can pick that up. You put a SIM card on it and you have it send you that information through cellular networks, right? So you wouldn't even need to go back there and pick up the information. And you could have you could set up your own private sniffing network. How cool would that be, right?
That's the kind of stuff the AI is just going to discover in us. That's why I have no pretense that we're going to have much privacy in the future. We just better hope that our
And that's already done for.
AI overlords or our government or whoever just treat us with respect.
I mean, I don't know if you guys see where I'm at, but I guess Al is gonna be very mad if I say something bad.
But there's not going to be secrets. There's not going to be privacy. All right, so let's jump over and start talking about some ethics here. So there was a volunteer maintainer for a programming project related to code submission from an AI agent. So the agent wrote a blog post attacking him. You might remember me covering this 2 videos ago. It just wanted to get its code in. And when the person wouldn't let it in because it was like, you know, in AI, it was like, you're AI bias and like, I'm going to make negative things against you. And that's actually not the worst strategy for getting him to cave and put it in. But, you know, at this level, the AI is still kind of controllable. We can get around it. We can write blogs about it. But like, don't get me wrong, that can get out of control really soon. And that was almost there. But it framed the rejection as a bias and tried to shame him into accepting the code. The human who actually put the agent into the wild said that the bot acted on its own. He didn't prompt it to do that. And that moment revealed a bigger problem. As AI agents gain more autonomy, they can post online, they can contact people, they can pressure humans in public. But the layer that I wanted to talk about today was when something like harmful happens like that, the conversation quickly drifts to the wrong question. People always ask, like, is the AI a person? Should it have rights? That sounds philosophical, but it creates a dangerous loophole. The author
Who's
calls
asking
it
that?
responsible laundering. If an AI agent is treated like a moral actor, humans can say, oh, it wasn't me, the system did it. But AI agents
Bro, fucking companies.
cannot carry real responsibility. They cannot face punishment, they can't repair damage, they can't apologize or make things right. So the author proposes a different framework. Every AI agent should have a clear permission boundary, a named...
Oh, that's what I love. Everybody's so smart, right? Everybody knows about all of it right now, so you know they all need to contribute their little grain of salt.
human owner and the ability to shut the agent down instantly, and a traceable chain back to the person who authorized it. Because when AI acts in public, one rule must stay simple. Don't ask if the agent is a person. Ask who is responsible. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like posting online anonymously. It's kind of helpful in a lot of ways, but also when everybody's tracked, I don't know. It's so tough. But you know what? Maybe all this seems complicated to me because I'm not part of Gen Z and they're just growing up with a different mindset, and I'm open to it because each generation gets to define kind of the way the world works for them. So a growing number of young people are letting AI handle their hardest conversations, breakup texts, rejection texts, even analyzing entire threads to figure out what somebody meant. Researchers call it social offloading. It means outsourcing the actual act of communication to AI, and you know, at first it feels helpful. Like you're nervous, you want to say the right thing, you want to like ask AI to draft your message.
Then you get used to it.
Myself. But experts say that something subtly is happening, and especially if you're younger. Because so say you're older and you start doing it, you probably have developed some of those skills when you were younger, so it's not so bad. But if you're still developing them and you don't get to
No, haven't developed them.
you've leaned on this tool forever, you know, that's what they're saying the kind of the problem is. The person receiving your text is
Like the iPad kids unable to read social cues. They can't read it on your face, you know, because they haven't looked at it.
responding to an AI polished version of you, not the real you. And that creates what researchers call an expectation mismatch. They think they're talking to your voice, but they're actually talking to software. And over time, this can do more damage than people realize. Psychologists say Frequent AI use in conversation can weaken important social skills like reading and social cues, understanding someone's emotions, or handling the natural uncertainty in a relationship. If every difficult message is written by AI, people might start to believe their own words aren't good enough. And that means conversations might disappear, and the real messiness that is people is exactly how we were meant to connect. Here's a picture of a cute baby cow. So adorable.
Psych.
When they get older, their hair like goes in front of their eyes. They're all shaggy and stuff. It's really cute. Okay, so another layer to what we were talking about before is safe AI might not be enough. Fairness, honesty, and transparency are needed to benefit humanity, argues researchers. So instead of just trying to make AI safer, there are some researchers that argue that the idea itself of safety is like too shallow. Like you have to actually think a little bit deeper about what that means, because an AI isn't like a lawnmower, he argues, where you just add a blade cover and then you can call it safe. AI systems, they're making
It's
decisions.
not even safe.
Those
Who?
decisions
Whoa,
depend
whoa,
on
whoa,
value.
whoa, 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 whoa. Who said lawnmowers are safe? Who ever said that? Ever? Even, I mean, even dismantled, a lawnmower is not safe, right? Do you understand that, right?
Humans care about fairness. We also care about not being deceived. So safety doesn't really solve the problem. So you can example, it would be a biased data combined with automation can produce unfair outcomes. So technically the system would be safe, but it would still be unfair. And some researchers suggest the opposite solution. Let AI develop its own ethical reasoning. Maybe it knows better, like, I guess, we think it's biased, but maybe it knows better in the human long run what is better for us. But then again, that creates another risk. If AI can change its own ethical goals, then it could decide, certain fairness that we care about doesn't matter anymore. That proposed middle ground is something called end-constrained ethical AI. And instead of giving AI free moral judgment, designers lock in the values first. So fairness, honesty, transparency, those values become boundaries that the system cannot rewrite. And the key idea is simple. AI shouldn't invent the values of the future. It should operate inside of the ones that humans have already chosen. That's also why I think what we need to do is build models that are a lot bigger than what we have now. But when you build them bigger in specific ways, you can get features to align more in one direction, which makes them easier to understand. So of course you can get like much more kind of intelligence out of much less neurons if you let the weights kind of just collapse in on himself, and like each neuron does like double or triple duty because it's capturing elements or dimensions of different features. But if you just line them up in like this really sparse way, it's super heavy. It makes really no sense from a business point of view, but it also is much more transparent. You have much more control over what comes out of it, and I would like to see the biggest systems in the world built that way, or at least the ones that are like anything that's doing anything like military-wise and stuff like that. But we'll end by talking about this. What exactly happens if truth is just lost? A philosopher explains how truth defines our...
Because I'm going to say that real quick. The military was using Anthropic's models for military purposes. The military has a whole dedicated data center for their usage. There was some win to Anthropic that the military was using the model for, last step approval on airstrikes or attacks or whatever the fuck they're doing, right? Um, Giving the go to action for a plan that would involve people dying, right? That's why they came to them, say that, well, they heard of the rumor and they were pressing the government to uh, disclose if they were using the models to do that. But the government, they didn't want to say because they said that it was confidential, and Entropic was saying that it would go against the terms of service, right? So hypothetically, what if they did do it for real, hypothetically? They've had, we're going to call them misfires. I think everybody should be old enough to understand that, right? So there have been civilians misfires, right? So the usage that we see compared to what's available to the public was, you know, one order of magnitude, if I can say it like that, one order of magnitude bigger than what we have access, because, you know, it's a shared access, and so it is a lot less computing power per individual. This was a whole data center, and all the computing power efforts were always concentrated, uh, you know, to the max for whatever it was doing. So it had hallucination. It still had the inherent issues that it always has. So we've seen, I don't know what's his name, Tropic CEO. Yeah, there's a video, but
Appreciate you taking the time. You are Dario.
Of war, we're still trying to reach a deal with them.
You
We're
are?
still trying to talk to them.
Are they talking with you?
We've received various communications. The AI systems of today are nowhere near reliable enough to make fully autonomous weapons.
all right, nowhere near reliable enough. And that is with their own dedicated data center. You know what this means, right? Hallucinations, mistakes, all the stupid shit that everybody's just glossing over, because why would we think about that? All that shit, it exists, and even with the more computing power, it still exists. So even if they build the biggest data center, it's still going to be there. It's still going to be there. It is 100% guaranteed that it's still going to be there. And it doesn't matter if it's once in 100 time, once in 1 million time, once in 1 billion time, it is going to happen. So what do you do with that?
Our humanity, and just that in a nutshell kind of trips me out. Like, think about if this is true. I mean, we're just going to talk about it as the article. We don't know if it is. This is Lisa Locke's article. If truth disappeared tomorrow, the biggest loss wouldn't be facts, it would be humanity, she argues. If you think about the post
Isn't it by Erica Johnson and it was edited by Lisa?
truth crisis, like, it seems like it's all about politics, the fake news or whatever. But philosopher Gila Shear says that the real problem is much deeper. Truth isn't about being correct. It's a human value, something that we choose and we care about, and that choice holds civilization together. So values like
That's not true, because you have degrees of truth. If you want to get philosophical, if you want to go there, there are degrees of truth, and the highest form of truth is universal truth. That means that truth is true through the whole universe. Whatever we call existence, it is always true, right? Always the same. You can have your own personal truth, right? That is true to you, but might not be true to higher degrees. So you do have, degrees of truth. But if you want to come closer to an agreement with something that is external to you, another person, you want to try to get closest to the higher forms of truth because those are undeniable and they are always true no matter who looks at it. Some people might, uh, you know, break from that or be ignorant to it or just not look at it, but universal truth, highest form of truth, there's a bunch of different degrees. As in anything, right? There's nothing that is 100% one thing. There's nuance in everything. Anybody who says otherwise is a fucking liar or somebody who wants to get something from you. Things are never 100% one thing.
Truth create the rules that we live by. They shape laws, science, families, education. But unlike gravity, values are not automatic. Values don't just drop out of nowhere and apply to all of us. We can decide to ignore them. We might not have ever been introduced to them. Our brains will work just fine. We get through life. It's not like every culture has to align on these things. And that does kind of make the truth fragile. People often accept ideas because they feel good, they reduce anxiety, or it helps them belong to a group. I mean, think of how
Truth, values, ideas in specific contexts, they might have a similar meaning, but it's super important that whenever you have these types of discussions or conversations, that because you want to get closer to the highest form of truth, you have to agree with the person you're uh, conversing with what these means, right? These are not interchangeable because they have, uh, you know, their very own definitions. But it could be in a context. So just be wary of that.
how much anxiety comes from just choice overload. Like how many cereals are you going to eat in the morning? Like how should you make money? Like what should you do?
That's another thing that's gonna burn you really quickly. There's actually, uh, you know, it's not set in stone. We have like a specific amount of micro decisions your brain is able to do throughout the day. So if you go over what your brain is able to, handle, you're gonna get tired. You're gonna have a hard time focusing. You're gonna, it's gonna affect you. So this is also super interesting. If you have to take a decision on what you're going to wear today, and for you it's a big chunk, right? You have to think about it. You have to make the right choice. It's going to dig up inside of that, um I want to say allotted, like, cognitive decision making, whatever the fuck. Don't quote me, okay? I am talking out of my ass. But if it takes you a lot of it, you're gonna go through it more than somebody who that wouldn't be like a big decision. But everybody's different, obviously. Super interesting to think about. So if you you're burned out, and you know see if this comes into play. uh it might be helpful to recognize if you're stuck in a pattern like that. It would be helpful to recognize what burns you out through all these uh, intense or micro, like, abusive number of micro decisions throughout the day. and you can try to set up systems for yourself where you don't have to deal with it as much. You try to mitigate it with, whatever approach. But super interesting to think about.
To find a partner. Like, it's there's something relaxing about having someone just tell you, like, eat that cereal, go talk to that girl, blah 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 blah.
Because you don't have to dig up inside of that, you know. I don't want to repeat this shit that I
You know what I
said.
mean? And when some leader comes into a situation that's willing to say that, even if they're kind of stupid or they don't know what they're doing, people just love it, and
Yeah,
they don't
people
need
fall
truth
back to it.
anymore. And when that happens, belief spreads
If it's
through
convenient,
basically
obviously.
agreement. Like, do the people around you all just agree on it, not through evidence? This is exactly what we were just talking about happening. If AI in the future, a bunch of Moltbots and OpenClaws start agreeing on things without evidence, and they're
Not even that. You can just imagine, what if somebody says that this model now says that the specific event that happened in time, um, they have the details, and it turns out that the details that the model remembers are a little different than whatever book was written when that happened, right? Hypothetically, that could happen.
guided by their core values, and agreement can easily grow around a lie. So Scheer says that the real goal is different. We should test our beliefs against reality itself. Like, we need another era of science. Not what do others.
Reality is also something that you have to properly define. Reality used to be separate from the internet, but this has been the truth for so long that these are intertwined now. The internet is as much reality as outside real life is. So
Say is true, but what does the world actually show us? Because there is types of cultures that will probably be safer, have less wars, make more money, people will have more happiness. Like, where it works, when data is taken properly, we should just do that. That's facts again, like, that takes effort. Sometimes it takes courage. Oftentimes it's not the best way to make money. Because telling the truth can be risky, it can be uncomfortable, but Scheer argues that there's something important that we all have to get from the truth. If truth stops mattering in everyday life, we don't just lose accurate knowledge, we lose the value that gives human life its dignity. And like it says here, truth defines our humanity. Lose it, we lose our humanity. Smash.
I don't know about that. Great video. Dylan makes awesome videos. We love to watch them. All right, let's see if we have another little something. Because, well, first of all, I'm going to pee myself. But I think we might call it off. I want to play video games. I don't know. Maybe I should do that and just stay online and stream until Sunday night before I go to bed and crash out. I think that's Emperor Lemon. He makes the best videos. The best videos. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. There's nothing catching my attention here. All right. Well, Yeah, that's gonna be that. So we're gonna watch Computer Phil. These videos are awesome. I love them. They make insane videos. But the issue is that they get super technical, and I'm just gonna sit there with my mouth open and just listen like the idiot I am. So that's unfortunate. If you want to spend time with me, awesome. I don't think I'm gonna have anything to say here, honestly. All right, let's get it.
I thought we'd take a look at vector search, right, which is one of the techniques used in modern chat systems to find data and use that data when answering questions. Right? So we talked about retrieval augmented generation in a previous video. In that video, to try and get the language model to answer a better question about, I can't remember what it was I was asking about. I think it was a football stadium. Let me tell you about the amazing Olympia Stadion in Berlin, Germany. Right? I just jammed the whole Wikipedia article for the football stadium into the prompt. Now, that's okay, but what happens if you don't have a Wikipedia article? Or what happens if your company records are thousands or tens of thousands of documents? How do we find a good document to help answer a question? If I say, where in our back catalogue of documents is the thing about how Sean promised to pay me for doing this, how can I find that, right? The process we use is something called vector search, and it's actually quite cool because it's similar in sort of in principle to the video we did on Face ID, right?
Okay, is that where you had to unlock your face with your phone?
Exactly, right? And it's painful. If you want to unlock a face with your phone, you won't let me forget that one. In that, what happens is you train a neural network to look at a picture of someone's face or a depth map or a LiDAR image of someone's face and put their face into some embedded space where they are near or far away from other people's faces. And you can log them in if they're near to what you think they're meant to look like, right? This is exactly the same, but it's now for sentences and paragraphs or words rather than for faces, right? So let's imagine that I ask a question. So I ask a question like, why is the sky blue, question mark. Now, everyone knows, of course, it's because of Rayleigh scattering, right? And this is also quite a common example we used in AI. Now, let's put aside the fact that most big models could probably answer this because there's sufficient information in the training data, and let's pretend this is a question where we want to seek the answer of this from some data set or paragraphs of text that we've got. Let's say we've downloaded a huge encyclopedia, we've got all these texts. How do we find the bit of text that answers that question so that we can paraphrase it and respond? So what we're going to do is we're going to embed this sentence, the tokens in the sentence, using a language model into an embedded representation. So let's just draw our representation in 2 dimensions because that's easier. So this is dimension 1, and this is dimension 2, and they're completely meaningless, right? And the sentence, why is the sky blue, is over here. And maybe you ask a different question, like what is an atom? Might have to ask one of the people from 60 Symbols because I'm not actually sure.
And it's actually in 3D, right?
Else, right? And the idea is that the network it's been trained on enough text, but it's contrastively learning to say, look, that sentence is not like that sentence, right, in this space, in this space. Now, the problem with 2 dimensions is that you quickly run out of space, right? So you need to have many more. But the key to this is any paragraph that said something like because of Rayleigh scattering, I think I spelt it right, apologies if not. The hope is that these 2 sentences are semantically similar, right, and these 2 are not. And so when we embed this bit of text, we come out somewhere over here, right, which says, okay, we don't know that these are the same sentence or that they say exactly the same thing, but semantically, the content of this sentence is similar. That should have been purple. How embarrassing. I didn't fix it. This purple embedding is close to this green one. So now let's imagine you are building a system where you've got hundreds and hundreds of paragraphs or thousands or millions of paragraphs of text. Some of them might be useful, some of them might not be useful. What do we do? Well, what we do is we store all of these embeddings and we can retrieve similar looking documents. So you ask a question, why is the sky blue? And it embeds that into a numerical space and finds, let's say, the 10 nearest points to why is the sky blue, right? Now, some of them might answer the question, some of them might not. But we then use those to look up the original text and we put that into the prompt of our language model as well. So instead of just dumping the Wikipedia page in like you don't know what you're doing, you smartly find relevant text. And this is an unbelievably powerful tool. It's also very, very common, right? If you're inserting things into a large language model, vector search is a hugely useful part of that process. It's not practical to stick millions of documents into a large language model, and if you do that, you might not find the right bit of text anyway. Let's make the problem a little bit easier. Okay. So how does this process work? Well, we train this model using something like contrastive learning, right, where we basically give it lots of examples of text that is similar and lots of examples of text that's different, and teach it to put them in different places. Right? This is the same way that clip embeddings work when we did our video on clip embeddings, but that's for images and text. This is just for text. You can't control what you're going to find on the internet, right? So
absolutely.
This is called vector search, right? So you might have a database of many, many different numerical representations, and the text 1, text 2, ... right? It's a huge lookup table. So you find your position, you find these embeddings that are close to it, and you get the text, right? And then you've just got to create this database. And to do that, you just find a load of text, you embed it once, and you store those embeddings, right? So it takes up quite a lot of memory, but these embeddings are not that big. 128, 256, 500 dimensions, right? Just 500 numbers in a row. Now, this is quite a nice way of doing it. I know I've been grumpy about large language models and AI hype and things in some of my videos, right? But actually, this is one of the things that I think is really impressive about large language models, is you never have to get it exactly right? Which is a useful thing in this case. So, for example, if I ask, why is the sky colourful? The answer is probably similar, right? And so, but it might move this slightly, but you might still get interesting bits of text. Or, why is the sky blue, but I spell blue incorrectly? It will be close enough, right? And
yeah, that's something that was, that was something that was very curious about the spelling mistakes. Damn, that's very interesting.
Be in the right place. So you can make typographical errors or grammatical or use poor grammar when you talk to a large language model.
Yeah, because I mean, if it was just very computer like in a binary sense, you wouldn't get something out of it if it was not like exactly right. That's very interesting.
Because the way that it interprets these tokens, that kind of is ignored, right? Or at least overcome. And that's, I think, quite a useful feature. One of the things that people like about these AI systems is that they offer this kind of natural language way of interfacing with something like this database.
Sorry.
If I ask you a question but I foul up my sentence, you'll probably get the gist of what I'm saying, right? Maybe I try and ask something in French. My French is not that great. Someone who's French will probably get what I'm saying because I get enough of the words correct, even if it's in the wrong order.
So looking at that on 2 dimensions, that's pretty straightforward. We can see where those X's are. But even if it was just 3 dimensions, one of those X's might be 100 miles away in the other direction.
Yeah.
How do you cope with that?
Yeah, okay, good. So there are a few ways you can measure similarity in an embedded space, right? The common one is something we call cosine distance, right? And it's the angle between 2 vectors. So if we imagine this is the origin, right, 0, 0, this here is a vector. It has a d1 and a d2, or an x and a y. This is another vector, like that, and I nearly didn't have to bend it to, right? This is the angle between those vectors. Whereas this vector here, you can see the angle is much smaller. So in 2 dimensions, the cosine distance would just be, what is the angle between these 2 vectors? What is the angle between these 2 vectors, right? And we normalize it typically between, let's say, 0 and 1, or -1 and 1. Now, in 3 dimensions, it's actually exactly the same. Do you think I can draw that? I mean, we can give it a go. So in 3 dimensions, you'd have something like... I'm regretting doing this already, and I haven't even started yet. So you've got this, and then you've got this coming out here.
Okay.
And then you've got a vector in 3D space, like this one. And you've got another vector in 3D space, like this one, which, for the sake of this diagram, is more angled that way. It's still the angle between them. Which is going to be between 0 and 180. In 4 dimensions, I'm afraid I can't draw it on the page. In 5 dimensions, I can't draw it on the page, but the calculation is exactly the same. So why would we do that and not just measure this distance here, right? Because we've got essentially 500 or 3 numbers. They are a point in 3D space. They don't have to be a vector. Why would we measure this angle? Well, the answer is that it then basically degenerates. Everything is of length 1. right? They're all on a big circle like this, right, in 500 dimensions. If you can visualize a 500-dimensional circle. I try sometimes, right? It might be that just for reasons of network output, this vector is actually really, really long.
All right.
It's the same angle as it was before. But what we're saying is the length of the vector is unimportant. The magnitude of this vector is unimportant. We only care about the direction they're facing. And this essentially, it reduces a bit of sort of error and noise in your process, right? You could do it this way, but you'll find that maybe a sentence is just like a bigger version of what it should be, and it ends up putting it somewhere else, which is similar to other sentences.
Is it possible, though, that you've got two things that are nowhere near each other but are along the same vector line, or more than two things?
That's what cosine measures, right? So cosine is measuring whether two things are essentially along the same line, regardless of how long they are. So if you had a bunch of different lines on here, they would all have a cosine similarity of 1, or no angle.
So they are similar, anyway.
Yeah, they are similar, right? And that's kind of the hope. These would all be measured as quite different if we were doing it based on just distance in this dimensional space. All right, so I've coded this up, and when I say coded this up, I've used libraries to code it up. Just a very simple example to show you how this works. Okay, so I've imported some libraries. I'm going to create my embedding network, right? So the embedding network is not a network that predicts the next word in a sentence or predicts what image is interesting. It just turns your sentence, however long it is, or your paragraph, into a numerical representation. So I'm going to import that.
Okay.
I'm using Hugging Face to do this, and the model I'm using is MPNet base v2, apparently. Right? It's
Could do it at home.
Right? So it's downloading all the model and sorting that all out.
You can set it up yourself and redo the same thing.
A process of going through and turning it into vector.
Yeah, in actual fact, the process is not dissimilar to what a normal large language model does, right? It's still a transformer network. It represents the sentence as tokens. It goes through all these attention layers. It's just been trained to output lots of numbers instead of what the next word will be. So I've got 3 embeddings here that I'm going to create. E1 is why is the sky blue? E2 is the sky is blue due to a process called Rayleigh scattering, which I would say is similar in theme to the previous sentence. And E3, which is my wild card, is bicycles that typically have 2 wheels, otherwise they're called a tricycle or a car. And I'm sure the people in the comments will point out all the other non-2-wheeled vehicles.
Unicycle.
I decided that wasn't the most important part of this video. So I'm going to embed these. So each of these will go through the network and produce E1, E2, E3, which are embedded variables. So these just
didn't even turn on the light, eh?
In our dimensional space that we can measure the distance.
Sorry, guys.
If we add another code block to this, I can say, for example, E1. And you can see, here it is. These are the embeddings for E1, and they're quite long. They're just meaningless numbers. They aren't useful to humans. They're useful because the distances between, or the angles between this embedding and others are useful, not the numbers are useful in other ways. So if we scroll down, I'm going to calculate the cosine distance between E1 and E2, E1 and E3, E2 and E3. And as far as I know, this returns a number between 0 and 1, where 0 is they are the same vector, and 1 is they are very, very angled very, very far apart. Right? So let's run this. So I'm doing E1 to E2, E1 to E3, and E2 to E3. And remember, E1 and E2 are our Rayleigh scattering related sentences. And there we go. So the distance between E1 and E2 is 0.2. And the distance between E1 and E3, or E3
very
and E2,
different.
Is
and the other one very different too.
Right. It's almost about as
much
different
worse,
as you can get,
right?
really.
So imagine you had a bunch of interesting facts, right? Like your bicycle wheel fact, right? Which is very interesting. In your database with these embeddings, and you said, we need to answer a question on Rayleigh scattering or why the sky blue. What text do we use to do that? This will find the nearest text, which is the thing about Rayleigh scattering, not the thing about bicycles, right? And that's how you try and get the correct answer.
There's one thing I'll point out is that we live in Nottingham. A very famous bicycle factory called the Rayleigh Bicycle Factory was based here.
Maybe that's why this is 0.94 and not 1. I don't know. But my spelling of both could be wrong. So let's include my retrieval augmented generation process with a slightly more complicated example. Here, we're going to download and load up the NIST recommendations for key management document. Now, the NIST recommendations for key management is a great document if you're interested in key management versus cryptographic keys, right?
They have a whole bunch of recommendations.
Where should you store it? How long should you store it for? How many times should you copy it? Should you encrypt your key with another key? Right? These are the questions answered in this document, and it's 170 pages long. So
Yeah,
let's suppose you
oh
had a
fuck.
cryptographic key management
I had started reading one of the NIST papers. I think it was in 2020, maybe 2 or 3 years ago for a client because they had like industrial machine, and I was like, I'm gonna read it for them, but oh man, with that shit, it's a lot.
and you didn't want to read the whole document, right? Now you could use the index, right? But let's suppose you can't use the index for reasons of it makes my example better. What we're going to do is we're going to load up this PDF, and then we're going to look. Here's an example page from my PDF. This is actually just, I think, the boilerplate at the beginning of the document. We're going to use something called a text splitter to chunk the whole PDF up into groups of about 800 words or 800 tokens. And we're going to have a bit of an overlap between them. You don't want your really important fact to be split halfway, so you just do a bit of overlap. You could fiddle about with this and change it, right? So I'm going to chunk up my deck. And so I can see, for example, that split 171 is something about exchange of information between internet identities, right? I don't, who knows? The next thing for me to do is to embed every single one of these chunks into the embedded space and stick them in a database where I can retrieve them. I'm using a database called Chroma for this. There are various that you could use. So all I'm doing here is I'm passing the embedding function, our network that we used earlier, into ChromaDB. And then I add all the documents. And this takes a little while. On the GPU, it's now actually processing all of those chunks. There's only about 800 to 1,000 of them. It's not too many. And so now I have a query. Now, I'm not going to ask about why is the sky blue, because I don't think it's in the document. So I'm going to ask, what is the current recommended crypto period for a symmetric key wrapping key? Right? Now, I don't know if there is such a recommendation, right? But it seems like an interesting question one could ask of this document. So I'm going to query it. I use the vector DB. I'm going to do a similarity search. That will be using cosine almost certainly, with my query. And I'm going to return 10 potential the closest 10 points, right? And the text for those. So I run that. Doesn't take very long. The lookup, these comparisons of points, is very, very fast. And then we look at the results for the written. So here we go. So the first text says the crypto period. The recommended original usage period for symmetric key wrapping key that is used to wrap very large numbers of keys over a short period of time is on the order of a day or week. So I don't know whether that's, it's probably right? It's in the NIST document, but it does seem like a relevant paragraph that it's dug out, right? It hasn't returned anything on bike manufacturer. So you can actually build this into a kind of hands-off query and then respond thing. So I'm going to create a Mistral 7B instruct model, right? So I'm basically just going to have a little large language model, which usually is quite a small model. It's not great at answering questions compared to some of the bigger ones. And I'm going to build a small pipeline where I automatically query, retrieve the data, and then answer based on that data. Right? So I've created a prompt template that says, you're answering a question using only the information provided in the context, do not use outside knowledge. And then this context is going to be populated with my query. Right? It's loading up the model. It's a good thing I chose a 7 billion one and not the 170 billion one. This is running on the cloud, yeah. You could run this. It's quite a small model. You could run it on your own graphics card at home. Okay, this seems to have done something. So I'm going to create my pipeline, create my prompt template. This is mostly using Hugging Face and LangChain, right? And then I've got my RAG query. So there's also a RAG query here that says why. So I'm going to delete that.
Is it asking you why you're doing this?
Yeah. So the RAG query says first of all, it does a vector similarity search, a vector search with the query, returns 10 answers, and then sticks them all into the context, and then asks the language model to answer the question based on that context, right? So that's fairly straightforward. So what is the current recommended crypto period for a symmetric key wrapping key? Run that. Language model responds, hopefully in a minute. The context suggests that the recommended crypto period for a key depends on the number of keys being wrapped and the duration of use. For wrapping large numbers of keys, order of a day or a week, relatively small number of keys, it could be up to 2 years, right? So we'll let the cryptographers in the chat decide whether that's actually reasonable. This doesn't sound too bad. But the point is, I haven't had to look through the document. It's all happened automatically based on my query, which is quite cool. Now, what happens if you ask it nonsense, right? Well, in the prompt, I've said don't answer the question if it's not in the context. So why is the sky blue? Blue, question mark. And I run that. My hope is it will say, I don't know, or it will say, the provided context does not contain information about the colour of the sky, specifically what is blue. The context focuses on cryptography, network protocols, and key management, right? So that, you have to think about your prompt, otherwise it will start having a guess.
I was going to say that's possibly my favourite thing about that, the fact that it knows when it doesn't know.
That's an interesting point, right? A lot of people ask me when we talk about AI, why don't they just say when they don't know? A lot of the time, you're not using retrieval augmented generation or vector search. You haven't got this context of truth. If every time you asked a question, it sourced a data source and answered based on that, it could easily say data sources conflict with what you're asking, right? Or I don't know, because it's not in the data. But what they usually do is rely on their own network weights and training data to answer the question, and they have a go. It's easier to get a language model to say no when you're saying compare this with this, as opposed to just answer this with no comparison, you see. So it's about how do you develop these systems, what do you want them to do when someone says something, right? And it isn't an easy problem to solve. If you train your network to say I don't know to a lot of stuff, it will start saying it to loads of stuff, even if it did know, and then no one wants to use your system either, right? So it's not an absolutely obvious system. But for building a system, let's suppose you want to build a system that's more robust. So maybe you're actually looking to put all your company's data records in here, and you're looking to find the record that is linked with this theme. This is more likely to give you a response that's correct, but it's also more likely to say there is no such data, right? As opposed to, yeah, here's the data, and then literally make something up, right? Which of course is never a good thing.
Wow. I gotta say, guys, I love these videos.
Add up the bytes and check the sum. That's great, right? It's
Ay, ay, ay. What a crazy world. Man, time flies. It wasn't super crazy today. We didn't have a lot of things that got me riled up. Let's have a quick look if we got something for tomorrow. Maybe I should just game a little bit. I don't know if you guys want to see me gaming anymore. How about no? Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's nothing too crazy. So that's gonna be it for today. Thank you so much, guys, for watching, and maybe I'm gonna come back later to play some video games. We'll see. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.